smarter than the mic. What a surprise. Wow, this is amazing. I am so happy to be here with you. So, yes, I am a winemaker, and I live in Valle de Guadalupe, Baja California, Mexico! So people ask me all the time, why Mexico? Why Mexico? Why wine? Well, even though I know I'm rocking the flower crown tonight, am I rocking it? Yeah. All right, thank you. I know I don't look Latina. Además, mi abuelita nació en el estado de Coahuila, Mexico. And my father is Mexican-American. Now, my dad raised me and my sisters 100% gringa. He was doing what he thought was best for us at the time. Nevertheless, from a young age, I was extremely interested in my Latino heritage, much to his confusion and dismay. And as an adult, after living 13 years working and traveling throughout Central and South America, I had the opportunity to reinvent myself and relocate, and I chose Mexico. For me, it felt right. It was like coming full circle, and I had the opportunity to recover a part of my family's cultural legacy and to connect to the piece of my heritage that I'd really never gotten to know. But we'll get back to Mexico in a minute. In my rustic little wine tasting bar, my little sala de degustación, people come by all the time to drink wine and sit down with me and talk. And inevitably, one of the first questions they ask me is, so how did you get into wine? And the answer is, of course, by drinking it. But you know, most of my adult life, I related to wine as this pleasant adult beverage, something I'd grab at the store on my way home from work to have with dinner or to sit with my friends. There was nothing mind-blowing, it was just something we did. However, when I lived and worked in Buenos Aires, Argentina in 2009, I had the opportunity to be introduced to some very fine wines. To put in perspective, these wines cost about 25 times more than I could ever afford for a bottle of wine. And I'll never forget that first bottle, because I realized right away there was something different going on in the glass, something I had never experienced before. It was wildly sensual and very engaging. And it dawned on me that wine is not a static, dead beverage. Wine is alive. And like every living thing, wine evolves. It starts in the vineyard, it ages in the barrel, it matures in the bottle, and even in the glass, the wine continues to give us new expressions. Wine tells a story. It tells a story, if you listen, about everything that happened that year, and it also expresses the heart, the soul, and the hands of the winemaker. Well, obviously, I was hooked. So, I started going to more wine tastings, reading, I took some classes, and generally made a nuisance of myself to anyone from whom I thought I might be able to learn something. And in 2012, when I could reinvent myself, I knew that I wanted it to be in the wine industry. I wasn't sure exactly what that was going to look like. But in the course of my investigations and research, I discovered this little-known wine valley in Baja California, just 90 minutes south of San Diego. And I thought, wine in Mexico? Come on, could that really be a thing? But I had to find out. So I went to Valle de Guadalupe and I fell in love. Not just with the dusty, bumpy dirt roads that went through these expansive leafy vineyards and olive groves. And it wasn't even just because of the passion and the kindness of the people that I met there. It was Mexico, which was a place that I dearly wanted to call home. And it was close to the border. I would be closer to my family in the States than I had been for over a decade. And on top of all of that, they had wine. So, a month later, I moved down there. I didn't really know anybody, but I immersed myself immediately in Mexican wine culture because I wanted to understand what Mexican wine was, what it was expressing, and what made it special. And in the course of my explorations, I found a little winemaking school, La Escuelita. It was right there in the wine valley. And I was like, I gotta go check that out. Okay, important part of the story. When I moved to Mexico, I had a very modest nest egg. It was just enough to live for 1 year if I lived frugally. But I knew when I moved there, I was gonna have to figure something out. I had to have a plan. Well, it was getting to that point when I discovered the wine school, so I went there, it was within reach, and my wheels started turning, and I started looking at numbers, and I determined if I could make 6 barrels of wine and sell that wine for a fair value, that I would be able to live and survive 1 more year in Mexico. I thought it was a great idea. Only problem was I didn't have any money. However, I was making friends, and among them was an American man also living in Baja, who had just discovered the wine valley. One day we were talking, and he said, you know, there's something really magical going on in this wine valley. And I said, you know, I want to make wine. And he said, do you have a business plan? Deer in the headlights. I went home, I studied, I researched, I put together this whole marketing thing. I poured my heart out into a mission statement, and I backed it up with numbers and graphs and pretty pictures and put it all in a binder, and I handed it to him, and he was impressed. He said, we should talk, and we did. And in due time, he chose to underwrite my venture. I was like, what? Wow, the universe is talking to me. This is a green light. Doors are opening for me, and I'm on the right path. Here's a man who respects me, who values my ideas, and is willing to back me. I could not, in my most wildest imagination, have dreamed up anything better. So it was a very heady time. I was finishing my course studies, and I was spending time in the vineyard, and it was 2 weeks before harvest, and it was time for him to write me a check. I mean, I'm the new güerita in town. If I don't have cash in hand, I'm not going to be able to negotiate for my grapes. So we decided to celebrate. We go out to lunch. It's a lovely day. It's a nice place. It's very celebratory and very festive. And we're sitting at the table, and then he leans towards me, and he slides his hand across the table. He touches my fingertip. It was a little bit creepy. It was a little bit weird, but I didn't really have time to process it, because then he took my hand and pulled me towards him, and he said, I hope you can reciprocate the feelings I have for you. And I knew in a split second exactly what was happening. He had cornered me. It was choreographed. He knew I didn't have a backup plan. And he knew I needed his money or I was out of the game. But all I could think of, all I could hear in my head was, no, no, no! But what actually happened was that I burst into tears and ran out of the restaurant.
Thank you.
The world was reeling. I was a mess. I didn't know what I was going to do. I couldn't think straight. But before I pulled out of the restaurant parking lot, I dialed him and I said, I am going to be successful, and I'm not sucking anyone's dick. I was truly terrified because I did not have a backup plan and I was out of time and didn't have the money. And I had to face the very real possibility of failure. So, I did the thing that's hardest in the world for me to do, and I reached out for help. I took out a couple of personal loans. I was gifted a little bit of money. I even sold futures in a product I had never made. And in 2 weeks, I raised the money to make my first 6 barrels of wine. The rest of harvest, I was in a state of euphoria that was almost like an altered state. I don't even think I could even describe it to you. It was so powerful. So the takeaway was that I didn't need him. The one person who I really needed to trust, the one person I needed to have confidence in, the one person I needed to turn to was me. I made it happen. I made my dream come true. Now, does that mean that my life as a woman winemaker, as an entrepreneur, and as a woman with my own business has unfolded perfectly since then? Hell no! I took my first 6 barrels of wine home, and they wouldn't fit through the door. I was like, Evil, are you kidding me? What? I went across the street to my neighbors and I was like, could you please help me uninstall a window? And they did. And together we lifted my first 6 barrels into the spare bedroom. Now when I left that little rental house in the village 3 years later, my spare bedroom was filled with 23 barrels of wine. And I had outgrown the space. So, you know, in spite of successes, I face hurdles and obstacles and even have to dodge slinging arrows now and then. But throughout it all, I have discovered inner resources I didn't even know I possessed. And I've grown a pretty hefty set of huevos. Thank you very much for having me. I really want to give a shout out to my kids. My daughter is here in the audience with me. My son and his fiance are back in Mexico, holding down the fort. They are my true inspiration. And one more thank you to a girlfriend, Evelyn Colon Morley. Because girl, if it wasn't for you, I never, ever, ever would have tried out for this.